Steven Sharif, the CEO of Intrepid Studios, made a comment a couple days ago over on Reddit that, as of the last 24 hours, has gone kind of viral online, on Twitter, on Reddit, all across social media. It is specifically pertaining to the weekly and then by extension monthly recurring costs to develop the game, along with a lawsuit that he seems to be embroiled in, specifically with his company. Now, before we dive in, I do want to point out it costs a lot of money to develop an MMO. I think one of the main reasons why so many companies around the world now are deterred from investing into and subsequently making MMOs is because of the sheer cost when it comes to the actual development of the game. Not only the time investment, but the financial investment. It costs hundreds of millions of dollars, potentially, to get a game from the conception until the actual publishing and launch of the game. If you're interested in seeing the reactions over on Twitter, you can just go ahead and search for Ashes of Creation lawsuit. Other people have made videos going over this, but the thread that I'm looking at here specifically is on the MMORPG subreddit. Intrepid Studios CEO Steven Sharif comments on lawsuit, says that the studio costs about $800,000 per week in operating expenses. $800,000. Let's go ahead and use the calculator here to put this into perspective for everyone. $800,000 times 4 is $3.2 million. Over $3 million. Now, let's multiply this by 12. $38,400,000. It costs almost $40 million over the course of an entire year to fully develop this game at the current state that it is in. This could get higher or ultimately lower based off of the continued expansion of the studio. I'd say it's going to continue to get progressively higher and progressively more expensive, but that is $40 million. I went ahead and looked at the active player count for Final Fantasy XIV, and it states that there's an average of 800,000 to roughly a million. A couple years ago, the average was like 400 to 600,000. There is a $15 roughly recurring monthly fee. So if we just kind of average that out here and say 600,000 active players are spending $15 per month, the game was making approximately $9 million per month. Do we think that there are going to be 600,000 active players playing at the release of Ashes of Creation? Definitely not. Final Fantasy XIV took years to get to the state that it was in and the size that it ultimately ended up being. There were 32,000 people playing at the peak 2 days ago. This was for early access, granted, and it's not a full release, but we can kind of use this as a gauge to estimate how many people are probably going to play. Even if we use Blue Protocol Star Resonance, which peaked at almost 100,000, or Throne and Liberty, which peaked at 300,000, that's still significantly less than Final Fantasy XIV currently. By using Throne and Liberty's 300,000, we're looking at approximately 4.5 million, which means roughly $50 million in revenue per year, which is just slightly more than what they need if they stay their current size and prices don't go up and costs don't continue to increase. If we're looking at Blue Protocol Star Resonance, which was at 100,000, and we multiply that by the same thing, you get 1.5 million. $1.5 million per month multiplied by 12 is 18 million. That is $18 million if they reach the 100,000 number. They would be making $1.5 million a month and spending over $3 million a month. That just isn't sustainable. But that's just my opinion and isn't really the topic specifically of this video. Steven himself stated, contract disputes are fairly common in business. This is pertaining to the Ashes of Creation lawsuit thread that was created. Why is Ashes of Creation launching on Steam seemingly out of nowhere? They're being sued for $850,000 by their cloud service provider. He states that they're common. This will be resolved in a similar manner to other disputes Intrepid has seen in its 9-year history So this is not the first time they've been embroiled in lawsuits. $800,000 is a week's worth of OPEX, which are operating expenses for the studio. Anyone promoting concern over this should consider that. So he's openly flexing here, saying we spend almost $1 million a week. This ain't nothing for us, don't worry. Yo, I don't mean to interrupt the video, but I need to take a moment here to thank all my incredible patrons over on Patreon whose support continues to allow for me to do regular videos like this every single day on this channel. Thank y'all so much, including our YouTube channel members. You guys mean the world to me. So do you guys as viewers as well. Now, without further ado, let's continue. $800,000 each week in expenses is $40 million a year, which seems kind of crazy. And then looking at the comments, this is why they released onto Steam, recoup some costs before shutting down. The game is so mismanaged, it's kind of insane. Even at the stage, it's still 5 years plus away from being a complete game. They think they'll sell the IP or studio to China before closing it down, since oh god, I can't believe they're spending $40 million a year on this. It's literally no hope they'll ever even get close to recouping development costs if and when the game ever does come out, which is years away in this case, which is my general thought process, because $40 million a year with this with this level of players is far from even scratching the surface of what they need. And ultimately, if they release it 5 times this number, is still going to fall significantly short of what they need. And as you can see, there is a continued decline. It peaked at 30,000 and then 31,000 and then almost 32,000 after 3 days. Day 4, 26, day 5, 25. So I'm assuming this is going to continue to decline ever downwards, and that makes sense. MMOs rarely spike up after their launch. So just purely judging by this, players have lost interest after 72 hours of actually playing, or maybe 4 days if you factor in the initial launch, but I wouldn't really consider this because it was only part of a day, like the evening of a day. And there were launch issues, server issues, which contributed to like this entire section of time, and then this dip here. So I'd say that this was essentially like their first full day of uninterrupted release. They're either lying to your face or they're terrible business people. In either case, it's a bad look for them and for the game, a shame. We have to add one more MMO to the pile of corpses that just keeps growing. At this rate, 20 years from now, people will still be playing WoW, ESO, Final Fantasy XIV, Guild Wars 2, Star Wars The Old Republic, and old school RuneScape. He's 100% lying. Steven downplaying the losses so people don't get cold feet, as he needs that Steam money as soon as possible. This very well could be the case. It really could be. The game is so mismanaged, it's kinda insane. That's literally the MMO model. They all cost an enormous amount of money and often sputter out before seeing profits. $40 million a year means you need 222,000 active subscriptions at $15 a month to break even. Look at what old school RuneScape and WoW are pulling. MMOs are an expensive gamble, and the market isn't widespread enough to justify the risk. There are really only 2 MMOs that are successful with a pay-to-play recurring subscription model. That is World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV. Other games can try. Other games are definitely trying, and there's no saying that they can't succeed. It's just very, very highly unlikely. $800,000 a week. This is basically money laundering scheme to them. $800,000 a week on a $850K being disputed. I call bullshit. Anyone actually in that scenario would settle on that. $800,000 a week will never be recouped by this game. I guess I'll be laying a lot of people off on release. Oh boy, who's gonna tell him? And then after that, you just see a bunch of people criticizing the game, saying it looks terrible, the game's boring. But that's not what we're here to talk about. I know people in the comments are gonna be some people that just see the title of the video, see several seconds of the video, and just label it, hate video, blah, blah, blah. All he's doing is hating on it for no reason. When I haven't said a single mean thing about this game in the entire video. I haven't said a single negative thing about this game in the entire video. All I've stated is that's a lot of money. I don't know how they're planning on recovering after spending so much money, especially if it still takes years and years and hundreds of millions of dollars more, and they continue to expand. I genuinely don't know. Unless the CEO is a billionaire, then I just don't see it. Or maybe people are right and he's lying and it doesn't cost $800,000 per week. I don't know. Either way, this drama, this entire situation is blowing rapidly out of control, and it's very interesting to watch. What do you guys, though, think is happening? Do you think he's scamming people? Do you think he's just trying to justify the exorbitant price of the lawsuit? Do you think he's trying to downplay it to kind of attempt to accumulate as much money as humanly possible from Steam purchases? Do you think that it is genuinely inconsequential to them and they could just throw $850,000 out like they're going to Taco Bell or something? Let me know down in the comments below. I know you think that you just hit the end of the video, and technically, yeah, you have. And I know your first reaction is to close out of it at this juncture, but don't. No, instead, I urge you to take a moment here and click one of the videos on screen that are coming up in just a moment, so you remain up to date with everything going on in the gacha genre. Trust me, you're not going to regret doing so. Stay flaccid.